A family seeks justice in federal court. They sue the City of Rockford and its police department, arguing officers beat a teenager and violated his rights.
The teen's mom, alongside attorneys, filed the federal lawsuit. WIFR's Nathaniel Langley has followed this incident from the start and shares more on the allegations.
Jake, Sydney, some might remember the arrest of 3 teens who reportedly fled from Rockford police in early December last year. Attorneys assert the ensuing chase led Jason Rivera to fear for his life, and a caution to viewers, some may find the following pictures to be graphic.
They're supposed to protect and serve us. Who are we going to trust if they're not doing their job properly?
Jennifer Laureano is taking the City of Rockford and police into court for her son.
He's a good kid. He plays on a football team. He gets good grades. He goes to school regularly.
On December 2nd, Jason Rivera, or JR, ran from officers Ryan Terranova and Kyle Parr after a traffic stop near Gilbert Avenue and Rockwell Street.
I know kids make mistakes, and he should not have ran.
The incident led to a federal lawsuit filed by Chicago-based law firm Lovey & Lovey.
This lawsuit is about getting justice for Jason and his family, but it is also about holding these officers accountable for their actions.
The lawsuit lays out 5 counts, with the first claiming defendants violated JR's Fourth Amendment rights due to excessive force.
He was laying down on the floor.
Officers allegedly pinned the 17-year-old, who said he couldn't breathe at the time. The last thing he says he remembers is Terranova or Parr beating him with a metal object before losing consciousness.
He was scared, and it just breaks my heart to see my son's face like that.
Photos after the alleged altercation show what appear to be facial fractures and severe abrasions, reportedly leading to a concussion.
It just hurts me a lot.
It was unprovoked. Jason was not presenting any threat to them.
WIFR requested body cam footage from the incident, but was rejected. Attorneys also tried with no success.
Their reasoning is because they're juveniles, but that is something we're looking forward to getting in this litigation, hopefully as soon as possible.
WIFR asked Rockford police for disciplinary records concerning Terranova and Parr as well. We were told no such documents existed. Attorney Gianna Giese calls that meaningless.
Police departments don't often like to investigate their own officers.
The city and police both said they don't comment on pending litigation.
This is heartbreaking for us.
As of now, the lawsuit doesn't list a dollar amount for relief.
I want those officers fired or some type of consequences to them so they can't do this anymore to these kids.
Attorneys seek a jury trial for the lawsuit. The case is filed in the Northern District of Illinois, Western Division.
Gizzy claims the involved officers received complaints in the past. She couldn't say yet if any were proven, but will try to find answers during the discovery phase.